So let's get started right into it.
Yeah, let's just get right into it.
For those that don't know, I got kind of fired as Darth Vader in a movie series, and I've got no job now, and I'm here working at BCRE.
Yeah, he's working at BCRE, and we're doing real estate interviews. He was young, he needed the money, and so here we are.
Not quite young. You see my face? It was fucked up at the end of the...
In case you're wondering what we're doing in these outfits, this is actually San Diego Comic-Con week. In fact, tomorrow, my family and I, we fly out for 4 days of San Diego Comic-Con International. And it's not like any typical Comic-Con or comic book convention that you may have seen where most of the activity just takes place inside the convention hall. The San Diego Comic-Con International is actually very special because 4 or 5 city blocks outside of the convention, right down in the San Diego gas lamp area, which in itself is a bit of a party town, turns into a big, gigantic comic book and fantasy film, festival, for lack of a better word. Kind of like a... Stop that, Marc. Superpowers weakening. The entire city turns into a big, gigantic festival. So it's like a big Mardi Gras of outside parties and events and venues, as well as the things that are going on within the actual Comic-Con venue inside the convention and within their different party grounds, from like actual concerts and things of that nature. So it's one big, gigantic, fun-filled time for the family. I've had the opportunity and privilege of going to private parties as well as the public parties like MTV and things of that nature, and being able to go to hang out with some of the actors. That's why I'll dress up like this, because it kind of gets me into these backstage areas sometimes, just because they think, hey, he looks like a cool dude who we could hang with. So
I'll be down there too in booth 127, squeezing out fresh vegetable juice.
Vegetable juice. Is that your secret to keeping up your metachlorians?
Sure.
Okay, so with that said, let's just get right into the show.
Okay, hold on. I got to take this off because this is hot and I can barely see.
That's the other thing about cosplaying, is make sure you dress in something practical, especially if you're going to be in a hot environment, and something that you can actually move around in. Later on, I'll talk to you a little bit more about this particular costume that my wife made, and all the different aspects of it. But this is a realty show, so let's keep it realty, and let's jump right in.
Okay, so topic number 1, we have Vallejo rent price gouging. So we talked about this on one of the prior episodes. Recently, there were 2 buildings in Vallejo, a 64 unit and a 90 unit complex that an investment group purchased and then quickly increased the rents on everyone by 100%. This obviously made the news. There's a lot of bad PR that the investment firm is getting. And now it's gotten to a point where Vallejo is now considering rent control. They're placing a moratorium on rent increases to not exceed beyond 10%. And they're now considering rent control for 2020 ballot, which, again, you have a lot of landlords participating, not violating price gouging laws, but then you have an idiot group like this that comes into place, and then they ruin it for everyone.
Yeah, and so that's the real big thing. This is one of those situations where the landlord, in this case, really was, being a landlord or bad actor, so to speak. They didn't take into consideration the fact that there were rent gouging laws in effect, and because of that, they walked right into a trap, essentially. They walked right into a brick wall, and so now they got the attention of the Solano DA, and it might make it bad for everybody. Because we already know that coming downwind is a statewide rent control, and after looking at the different aspects of the statewide rent control, it's actually tolerable and workable from a landlord standpoint. It's not unreasonably restrictive on a landlord. However, we don't know what the ultimate citywide rent control might be that will be imposed in Vallejo when that actually comes to pass, if that comes to pass.
It sounds like the council is on board with a 10% cap, and it seems like they're okay with it. Now, one of the big discussions with the price gouging laws is you'll hear a lot of people say that only affects the affected counties on the map. So when a state of emergency is issued, price gouging laws kick into place to basically prevent any industry from increasing prices to take advantage of the victims that have lost their home, that are now needing certain services or products. And again, it just prevents people from basically just raping other people's bank accounts.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, just to interject, in a prior show, we had analyzed a property, a 32-unit apartment complex that I actually myself had gotten into escrow on because I was selling another large apartment complex in Arkansas. And one of the issues why I'm, rethinking that deal is because the current owner of that property raised the rents on their tenants actually anywhere from 40 to 70%. And so when I'm analyzing the property that I myself am buying, a big question I have to ask myself, okay, these rents are great, the property cash flows, and then I look at the rent history and the 36-month trailing, and I realize that these rental increases have just occurred within the last 3 to 4 months, and it wasn't 10%, it was 40% and 70%. Now, in that particular instance, the 32 tenants that live in this 32-unit building aren't complaining, but that's something that's definitely something that I have to think about because I don't want to inherit the problem. I'm the one that closes escrow. I didn't actually raise the rents, but then now somebody brings to the attention of the tenants and the media that, hey, the landlord wasn't supposed to do this. So, of course, that can potentially bring unwarranted and unwanted media attention, negative media attention towards me or even the past landlord. Again, this is just something that landlords have to be very cognizant of.
And it's funny because one of the responses that you received was, oh, you don't need to worry about it because it doesn't apply to Sacramento County. And going back, that's one of the biggest arguments that you hear from people is that, no, it doesn't apply to my county. However, the state attorney general has made it clear and said that they interpret this to apply to all counties in California regardless, because you can't measure, and it's very hard to measure the exact demand that that victims may place on other counties because of certain situations. A perfect example is going back to rental housing is if you have a city that burns down, like in, it was Paradise, right? That burned down. Well, they transfer out to other cities and other counties for housing. Well, if they go to a county like Solano that wasn't affected by those fires, well, it's still an increase in demand, and that's where rent pricing is limited at 10%. So now the Solano County DA, as you mentioned, is now looking at prosecuting the investment group that did these 100% increases, and it comes with civil and also criminal penalties. I mean, we're talking about jail time.
Right. Yeah. Actual jail time. In fact, the one instance of one jail time we know about is the woman who increased her rent on her tenant 40% in Marin County and actually spent jail time. So I'm not going to have the leniency of the court being female and my first-time offender, so I want to stay away from that.
Maybe if you show up to court in that outfit.
Yeah, I think that
might be
definitely do the trick. Yeah, yeah.